Welcome back to Weather Nation. We continue our coverage of Dorian. It's a major hurricane, and we will continue to keep tabs on the latest information. And in fact, Viki, a new little tidbit, the pressure of the storm has dropped to 910 millibars.
And even though it's only a drop of 1 millibar, we just want to emphasize that any drop in pressure, any increase in wind speeds is just an indication that this storm is still intensifying. Just think, this morning we woke up to a Category 4 hurricane with 150-mile-per-hour winds. We jumped up to that Category 5, and now this storm has just completely shattered any of those low-end Category 5 minimum requirements.
Kind of the textbook definition of rapid intensification with this storm. And unfortunately for our friends in the Bahamas, we've had 2 landfalls already with Dorian as it just slowly glides to the west.
And when we talk about those maximum sustained winds, they're right around the eye. So we've got the infrared satellite zoomed in over the Abaco Islands in the Bahamas to show you the center of this storm as it tracked over Elbow Key. That was the first landfall. Then the second one was recorded near Marsh Harbor. That's on Great Abaco. Again, both of these within the Abaco Islands.
And of course, we'll continue to see this drift off towards the west. So again, not only have we had 2 landfalls there, we could see a landfall for Grand Bahama Island. And again, with all those concerns with storm surge, with the devastating winds and everything along with it.
Yeah, because when we're talking about winds this strong, 185, those are the sustained winds. Reports pushing those gusts up to 220. That's got a lot of impacts, both on structures, because not a lot of structures are able to withstand that kind of just consistent onslaught of winds. But we also have to remember that we've got a lot of other concerns, including storm surge across the Bahamas. So those hurricane warnings are in place for the winds, but a lot of the other conditions that we're dealing with are just cumulative.
And of course, the Bahamas, very flat terrain, so the storm surge, of course, will be a huge concern, especially since we're seeing the potential of upwards of 23 feet with that storm surge.
And it's so crazy to think about 24 feet, a 2-story building.
That's right.
And that's just raising the water level, your normal tide line. Then put on top of it 20-foot seas.
That's right.
And if that's not enough, put down 2 to 3 feet of rain. I mean, these poor islands cannot withstand these types of impacts for a couple of hours, let alone 36 hours.
And that's the thing, the slow-moving nature, that 7-mile-per-hour westward movement is just going to allow Dorian to just devastate. I mean, it's very sad, very hard to look at this forecast and not feel bad for everyone in this area. Because look, we're likely to see Category 5 wind speeds all the way into Monday, through Monday, really, for the Grand Bahama Island.
And whether we look at the satellite imagery or we look at this forecast, another important thing to note, and something that the Hurricane Center is trying to stress right now, as the center of this storm passes over the Bahamas, there will be a time where conditions settle down, because within the eye, it's usually dry and sunny.
That's right.
But it's very misleading, because once the other side of that eye approaches, those wind gusts and all those conditions will pick up very quickly.
Yeah, so stay sheltered, stay in place if you are in this storm, particularly the Bahamas, again, as things will change very rapidly once the eye continues to move by and continue to move to the west.
And another important note is when we talk about hurricanes is winds are rotating counterclockwise around the center of this storm. So while some shores of the islands are dealing with the storm surge today, it could be for some of the southern shores that are going to deal with it into Monday and Tuesday, with the southerly winds that will then be wrapping around on the south side of the system.
Yeah, so we could see all that wind kind of funnel in the water into the Freeport area for our Monday into Tuesday. And then look at this, with the northeasterly winds, the Florida coast heading into Tuesday morning as well.
So we're talking about lots of different types of impacts, and also lots of different phases of those impacts as well.
That's right. So again, the latest information on the forecast, we will bring it to you here on Weather Nation. Again, we're likely to see tropical storm force wind speeds, if not greater, with this storm.
And what a tropical storm force, in this case hurricane force winds, look like. Look at what happened in Cooperstown. This is in the Bahamas. This was just earlier today. We've got the winds whipping through the trees, through the power lines as well. And then look at the angry seas offshore. So again, we've got cumulative impacts that we're going to continue to deal with in the Bahamas for the next, unfortunately for some, even 48 hours, just because of the very slow moving nature of this storm. So heartbreaking imagery across the area, of course, keeping all the residents in the Bahamas in our thoughts as they continue to deal with the strongest hurricane ever to impact the northwestern Bahamas. It's also now tied as the second strongest Atlantic hurricane on record, with those maximum winds of 185 miles per hour. Just for reference, in case you're curious, the strongest hurricane in the Atlantic basin based on wind speeds was Hurricane Allen with 190 mile per hour sustained winds. So we're about 5 miles per hour shy of that all-time record. So as this whole system moves west, there are still impacts and threats that are going to be felt across the state of Florida. We've got a slew of tropical alerts that have been issued for the eastern shores as well as central portions of Florida. Whether or not this system skirts the shore, makes landfall, or stays offshore, it's important to note we will feel impacts, and a little shift east or west of that center could mean either greater impacts or shifting those impacts a little further to the north. So I know there's still uncertainty. I wish we could give you more pinpointed information, but because it's moving so slowly, there could be some significant changes in the forecast in just the next 1 to 2 days. But those onshore winds that Joe and I mentioned will bring storm surge concerns to the eastern shores of Florida as well. Storm surge watches in place in anticipation of those conditions to arrive in the next 36 to 48 hours. We'll be with you here at Weather Nation. Weather, it's what we do. We will get you through this storm as we continue to track Hurricane Dorian.